and you were a song and dance man.
That's correct.
And that when you had that realization, it was not a proactive realization. It was sort of like, oh, okay, well, I am a song and dance man, but I don't need to stay a song and dance man.
I wanted to make a move. I wanted to make a move to a place where I could be looked at more seriously and have the opportunity to explore a craft that really was a craft.
Were you training?
I was training. I worked I trained at the Actors Institute with two wonderful teachers, Dan Fauci and David Kagan. I didn't overtrain, but that was my acting, cutting my teeth in the acting school world.
Uh-huh.
And then I started to do extra work because I wanted to learn about the camera. And what was that about? What was this inanimate object that was film? And I was doing extra work, and I got called to do a movie called The Changeling. And there was a scene in Lincoln Center outside. And guess who starred in that movie? George C. Scott.
It's a weird movie.
Yeah, it's a weird movie. Strange one.
It's like a horror movie, right? It's a weird horror movie.
A weird horror movie.
Yeah.
And, this is a number of years later and before Taps. And he breezed by me without even knowing who I was or recognizing me. I was crushed. Crushed. Oh, yeah. Right?
Did you want to yell, I'm doing it? I decided to do it.
Of course I did. It's me. Don't you recognize me?
Yeah.
That was a missed opportunity, but a great opportunity to be in his presence. And then Taps came, and then we were able to reconnect. And he went, it's you. So you did it. You didn't take my advice. You did it anyway.
I'm impressed that he remembered telling you that.
He did. And then I got a chance to speak to him about where I had come from, how his story affected me, and how maybe this wasn't the right thing to do. His former wife, Colleen Dewhurst, handed me my first Theater World Award.
Oh, wow.
I was able to say, look, I started to do some straight drama, and Colleen, I won the Theater World Award for a piece that I did at the Negro Ensemble Company called Zoo Man and the Sign by Pulitzer Prize winner Charles Fuller.
Uh-huh.
He won the Pulitzer Prize for Soldier Story. So that's my little George C. Scott. He affected my life because of his forcefulness.
Yeah.
His attitude. He was serious. He was a serious dude, serious chess player. I'll never forget on Taps, he had a 4-page monologue and never had the sides or a paper in his hand, ever. And he came out and he did a rehearsal of the monologue. 4 pages to the cadets, with which I'm one, Sean Penn, Timothy Hutton, all of us are standing in front of him. And every single time he did the monologue, when he got to a certain place, he'd take his hat off. He'd touch the breast medals on his breastplate. He did it exactly the same every single time. And so I followed him in between takes because I wondered if he was going around the corner to study his lines, what he was doing. I followed him. And he would go back to where the 18-wheelers were, camera truck, and there was a chessboard set up and 2 chairs and 1 cat sitting there. He'd go right back to his chess game and play chess. And I went, how did this dude do this? He was his brain, he was like a steel drum. He was such a consummate performer. And I was really quite amazed at that, how he could remember all that. And not only that, remember what his continuity.
Right, his choices were, yeah. Specific continuity choices, right. I feel like he was very hard on himself. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think you are wrong. I think he took on an amazing pressure to be, I would say good, but I don't think it's good. I think it's original. I think it's an amazing pressure to be in his own skin. I think that's why he never stopped drinking. I think that's why he never stopped smoking, because I think that was an intrinsic part of who he was.
Yeah, and who he was he was always in the middle of that fight with himself. So you're kind of entering that intensity. I'm here.
Yeah, you're entering his battle, his war.
Right.
That's a really great way to put it.
Because I don't know why. Because a few months ago I was like, I gotta watch all the George C. Scott that's available, because I don't know why that stuff hits you, because he was always a I remember seeing Patton when I was very young, but I there was something about the authenticity of just everything about him. Like there was no denying that guy. And I don't know why it popped in my head relatively recently to revisit it, but it was really intense, man. Because there's not a ton of shit. You know, he could have done more, but he did a handful of things. But there's not a huge filmography there.
No, there's not. And I feel like he was a guy who really lived it.
Yeah.
And you know, there's something about, look, I came from the song and dance world, and then
What does that mean? You were doing musicals?
Musicals,
yeah,
Broadway musicals. You know, there was some drama there, and certainly, the drama is overextended because you've got to reach the last seat. And the turning point in my life was going to audition for TAPS while we're on this movie for a casting director long gone, who I so respect and admire, Shirley Rich. And she called me in. I went and auditioned for this piece, and she was very kind. I finished reading the copy, and she took her time and was thoughtful. And in her thoughts, she then uttered, Giancarlo, I don't know how to say this, but I want to say it as graceful as I can. You need to learn how to act. And I was sat back in my seat. Let me rephrase that. You're acting for the last row. And I know I've seen you on Broadway, but you need to learn how to act for film. And I said, okay, tears coming. How do I do that? Go do some plays. Go do some straight drama.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and did Henry Street Settlement, and I went and did Zoo Man and the Sign, for which I won my very first Obie Award.
Wow.
With the Negro Drama Company. And granted, you know, I didn't get the part in the movie. And a year had passed, and I got a phone call from my agent that said, Shirley Rich wants to see you. I was like so excited because I would have a chance to redeem myself for not having gotten this other part and show her that I did have chops and that I did know how to act, because it comes from inside your gut. And they said, well, it's for a movie called TAPS. I said, well, no, they shot that movie. I didn't get that movie. They said, no, it was postponed a year, and Shirley wants to see you again for it. Marc, I walked in that room. I just was, you know, acting is being. And I read the part with her again, and she, Giancarlo, what did you do? I said, I did what you told me to do.
Yeah.
I did what you told me to do, unlike not doing what George C. Scott told me to do. And she said, what was that? I said, you told me to go do some plays. So I've been doing a play. I did a play called Who Loves a Dancer at Henry Street Settlement. I've been in acting class. I did another play I hadn't done Zoo Man and the Sign yet. And she said, okay, would you come back at 3:00 and read with Timothy Hutton and read for Stanley Jaffe, our producer? I walked in, I read, they chased me out of the room. Would you do this role? I said, yes. And that was the beginning of understanding. And it's back to George again. See, George didn't try to do anything he wasn't. You know, he just tried to commit and be real. And acting is doing something real for a purpose, for a reason. What is that reason? The reason is to try to honor the writer's words and to move your audience from one place to another and to be real and organic. And I think that's what George was. George lived his life in his own skin. And the older I get, the more seasoned I get, the more I realize no matter what you're doing, you take on the skin of that character and live in that skin. Like a bellows, breathe in that skin, see through that skin, you know, transform yourself without anyone realizing that you even did that.
Yeah.
And the actors I love that can do that are George C. Scott, you know, Gene Hackman, Robert Mitchum. You know, some actors play themselves over and over and over again. And another actor who I met and really loved his work, Burt Lancaster. I worked with him when I was young.
You did? On what?
An American Christmas. It was a piece that was done on the stage on 6th Street. There was a stage there. It's still there, called An American Christmas. Burt was in the latter part of his life, before he eventually went to Los Angeles and wound up in the nursing home downtown. And he was a crotchety, like George. George was crotchety. Burt Lancaster was crotchety. Yeah. Didn't want to talk to anybody. You know, he was narrating. this piece. And I was one of the black kids that came out and did the songs in between his narration and all that. And it was filmed, but there was something about me that he must have liked because I was drawn to him, because I didn't want to really, some actors hate when young actors come up and they want to just bombard you with, what did you do in this? And how'd you do this? I ask you all these questions. And, so I looked at him and I said, so do you really know how to swim? And, the swimmer, Elmer Gantry, and I was really cool about just throwing a little stuff out there. And he said, hey, come on, come to my dressing room, talk to me. And we talked. And I thought, he was someone that could maybe pass something down to me, but I liked him. And I guess I'm leading to is I was drawn to actors who were completely themselves, completely comfortable with who they are. Now, most of us actors are not. That's why we're actors. We're trying to get comfortable in someone else's skin. We're trying to work through our personality deficiencies through the characters we play. And acting teacher told me that.
You think that's true?
I think it's partially true.
Because I think it feels like the better actors aren't that way, but it doesn't mean that they themselves are necessarily that interesting. So I like the romantic idea of trying to figure out who you are and being afraid of that and having to do it by doing other people. But it seems like some of the guys who are just great actors, they know exactly who they are, and there's not a lot going on there.
I must say that I would agree, and I don't want to name names, but there's a great actor that I met who had no personality.
Yeah.
And I went, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I got a little personality. I love life. I dig life.
You got a lot of personality.
I dig women. And I went, wait a minute. How is he so good?
Yeah.
And then I started to look closer. And I started to realize that many of us as actors find a niche and we do it over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
And I realized I started to see the through line in this actor's work. Yeah, there was excitement when this actor was young, did some great stuff, and then just kept repeating. And that to me is not ever something that I aspire to or want to do.
Right, because then it's just a con game. You gotta hustle. You know what I mean? It's like he's the guy that does the thing. Bring him, let him do the thing.
Yeah, but and a lot of actors they get the opportunity to be on television, and television's changed. We're in the golden age of television now. Used to be you got a TV show, it's death. And I've been blessed to be able to come in on the tail end of all that. I never wanted to do TV. I wanted to do theater and then do film. Had to work my way through some soap operas, work my way through a lot of guest spots, and then eventually get to film and realize that was my opportunity to always play someone different. That's what allows me to feel like I'm still learning.
Oh yeah, well I think that's definitely clear with you, and also I'm not trying to be condescending about these actors because I think a lot of a lot of guys who have a lot of space in their actual personality, have room to sort of they might actually feel alive through characters. It doesn't mean they're emotionally stunted or something, but it's just sort of interesting that the people that you mention as being authentically themselves are some of my favorites as well. Gene Hackman, you don't even know where that comes from, and I feel like you have something similar to him. I read an interview with him once where, he said that, I don't remember who he was talking to, but he just said, you got to know how to fill yourself up. That when a scene started, he could, and it just, when you look at him, you're like, oh, he's filled himself up with whatever that is, but he's still just Gene Hackman, but it's just, he knows how to fucking fill himself up. And and no matter what he does, you can't stop watching him. You watch him eat a sandwich.
Yeah, he is one of my favorites. He happens to live up in Santa Fe, I believe, as does a woman who I've had a crush on for my whole life, Shirley MacLaine, who has worked a little bit in Downton Abbey more recently than I think Gene.
But Gene's retired, I think, right?
I believe he is retired. Yeah.
Do you guys